So, welcome back to Dominate Your Day. And I'm excited to have here with me Trisha Cunningham. Trisha is this amazing person. I think she's somebody that we all aspire to really learn from. She's a nonprofit leader and Fortune 500 technology executive who is now president and CEO of one of the largest food banks in the country. So prior to North Texas Food Bank, she was the Chief Citizenship Officer at Texas Instruments. Welcome, Trisha. What a blessing it is to have you here today.
Oh, I'm just so glad to be
Well, you've done a lot in your career, and I think the new way of working, the future of the workplace, you actually are a great role model of that. It's the old days. Think about our parents; they would work and then they would quit, and then they go retire. But no,
here.
we keep. You have built yourself an opportunity to serve others in this next chapter in life. So, let's talk first about that. How did that come about?
Well, if you would have wanted to. It was one of those things that, I mean, I am a person of faith. I do believe it was a little bit of divine intervention, that there were things that I learned throughout my entire career and experiences I had that really gave me what I needed for this role today. And I'm continuing to learn. I'm a continual learner. I love challenges. I love to be able to fix things.
Mhm.
I love to be able to see big goals and sort of how can we accomplish those goals together. And I love all of that. But whenever I was at Texas Instruments for 30 years, and I had 5 different roles when I was there. And a lot of those roles gave me an opportunity to experience things like, I mean, I had to be, leadership, and TI did a great job of being able to train on leadership and what we needed to look at there. We had a lot of good processes and project management and quality, procurement, all these wonderful functions that, had great expertise, standard operating procedures. We had things like crisis
Mm.
management. I was able to work on merger and acquisition teams, and sort of bringing together. And then, we had distribution, we had third parties that were out there, and how we work with those. We had trade associations. We had all these different things that whenever you sort of pick those up, you can put them into the nonprofit space. And it's just how you work with them and how you translate that. Also, I will say that I really got interested in the nonprofit work whenever I was at TI. I had a wonderful mentor that told me, so Trisha, you're too insular to your company.
Ah,
Said you will be a better leader by building a broader network and also understanding more what your community needs, and sort of having more connections out in the community. And she was absolutely right. And I researched and I thought, what are the things that I need? I grew up in Western Kentucky. My parents had only an 8th grade formal education,
wow.
but they believed in the value of education. And it was always drilled into me and my brother when we were growing up that we would get a college education. And whenever I was in at TI, I thought the only reason I'm here is because I had that family that supported me,
Mm.
and they were the ones that were going to make those sacrifices to understand that I could have the opportunity to get an education. But I thought about those that had that potential, but they didn't have that same environment that I had. So that's where I started working. I started working a lot in organizations that help equip girls in particular, because in the technology industry, there's
Mm.
fewer women that are in engineering, only 1 in 5 are female. Started working in that area to try to equip women and girls to be able to help reach their full potential. And also with those organizations that gave them that, I believe in you, you can do this, you can go to you can go to college,
Mhm.
there's resources for you to be able to get access to the education. And then as I continued on, in many different roles at the organization at TI, I found myself in that last role as chief citizenship officer. But even before that, I started serving on those nonprofit boards,
Mhm.
started building my network, started building those connections, which I got a little taste of it and I really liked it. I
Mhm.
really liked to see the impact that you could have on your community and some of the results that were there. So I ended up going full time basically into a lot of that social responsibility type work at Texas Instruments, which is what that chief citizenship officer role was. It combined a lot of our sustainability and practices across the organization, how we report out, how basically we're making the world better because our company was in it and we were acting responsibly. But it also had the portion of our work that was about giving back and giving to the nonprofits that were making a difference, and putting together a global strategy with our team and our foundation to make sure that we weren't just throwing money over the bow of the ship, as they say, but really were doing things that could have an end result and impact on what was going on. So more of that strategic philanthropy focus. And then the employee giving and inspiring and helping our employees to be able to connect with what was important to them as well. You know, what was their purpose? And so that's sort of grew over time.
Mhm.
And then after I'd sort of switched jobs every 5 to 6 years, whenever I felt like I had done what I could do in those roles and someone behind me could come in and do more. And I decided, you know what, if I ever wanted to do anything else after having spent 30 years there, I needed to go and try it. So I called it graduating. I graduated from
I
TI
love
because you
that.
take that. Right. I mean, because I fully intended to take
Mhm,
all this skills and knowledge, just like you do when you
mhm,
graduate from high school or college,
mhm.
to go on to do better things with it. So I was going to take all this skills and knowledge that I had been able to gather through my corporate work and be able to put it to use for good. And so that was my graduation party. And that's what we called it whenever they had the retirement quote unquote party for me. We called it a graduation party. And and so then the rest is history. And I wanted to make sure that I could do something that was going to lift up the entire community. And I've been so inspired in this role because there are so many people that want to do the same thing. And that mission focus just
Mhm.
means so much.
And we're gonna talk about that in a minute, but I'm curious, your story is powerful, and we look back at that pivotal moment. It sounds like it was that mentor that said, "You need to expand your group."
Absolutely.
And
And if I had not taken that advice to heart, I would have never had the opportunity to serve, because I sought out the first board I wanted to serve on and served on that board, saw the impact that it could make. Well, when you start getting into the nonprofit boards, you have other board members that serve on other boards and they invite you to serve on that board and then these boards. And then, so I ended up serving on a lot of nonprofit boards, and I still serve on nonprofit boards. It's something that's important to me because I think we can all give back in some of those areas.
so tell us about, I was hearing some of your talents come through. I'm getting some feedback. Let me see. Do you hear a feedback when I talk? Are you hearing?
No.
Okay. Um, and it's okay because we can edit from there.
Yeah, right, right.
Um, so I'm hearing some of your talents, some of your strengths come through. Can you tell us your top strengths? You've been working with Clifton Strengths and working with Coach for a while with your team. Can you talk a little bit about that and what strengths you think kind of were at play there when you were looking at these opportunities?
Yeah, I think, well, I'll just list out my top
Sure.
five strengths. So I have competition, futuristic, woo, relator, and achiever.
Mm,
And and so I've always been an achiever. Uh, but there's a couple that showed up in my profile in different areas once I got to this job. And I think I was just leaning into those a little bit more.
mhm,
I never ever would have thought about woo
mhm,
and that. But in this role, it's so important, and this whole relator as well, and how those work together to be able to understand and to be able to figure out how things work together,
mhm,
but also to be able to share our story in a very effective way that is meaningful to the people that we're talking with and our audiences that we're talking with. And so this whole woo, I've had to be an ambassador, where a lot of my roles at TI, I was the wind behind someone else's wings
mhm.
and helping them to be able to be out in the front, where I tried to sort of stand back a little bit in that. But in this, I've had to be out front and not be afraid to tell our story and share our story.
I love that. And woo is, for those who don't know, if you haven't done your Clifton Strengths, woo is winning others over. People with
Right.
high woo get energy from meeting new people and new experiences where they get to experience. So, networking for you probably came a little bit easier because you were okay to walk in a room where you didn't know anybody. And okay,
And that's exactly right.
yeah.
Yes.
And I always say,
Yes.
find a woo if you're not woo. Find a woo if you're trying
Right.
to network. And we use other talents to help us network. I've been networking lately, which I haven't done in a long time, and it's so much fun. I don't have woo, but I'm using some of my other talents like relator and individualization to do that. And so it's kind of fun to find out, because of your uniqueness, what's giving you energy. And we're all about, how do you live in that flow state every day? And it's when you could just keep doing something on and you don't even know what time it is. You lose track of
Mhm.
time. But when you're in your strengths, you get that energy. And so I
Absolutely.
love that. And the competition futuristic, I can see that coming through as you were fundraising, as you were building out what the future would look like for yourself, maybe as you were thinking about what is coming up with a great term, graduation. I love that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I will say that one of the things I did, I had no idea where I was going to end up. But what I did is, all these people that I had built these relationships with, because I had taken that advice of the mentor.
mhm.
And like you said, when you enjoy something, you want to do it more and you want to do it more. I met so many wonderful people that I now consider friends and part of my network, and I would do anything to help them. My husband said I probably was gone more whenever I was in between jobs, because I would set up breakfast coffee, I would set up a mid-morning coffee, I would
Mhm.
set up lunch, and I would just go talk to people and network, and people that I thought might have good input and advice for me along the way as well. I wanted to learn from them, and because I admired some of the things that they did, but I used that opportunity to even make more connections.
And I think that's an important thing in this environment. Coming out of COVID, building community. You were probably doing all this before COVID, I'm assuming, right? When you were connecting. But
Right.
I think coming out of COVID, we realized that community is it is a piece of building well-being and thriving well-being, is being in a community. People don't want to be
Right.
isolated. And the math equation there is that each of us know 250 people and they know 250 people. And just making those coffee connection, the lunch connection, you just expand, expand, expand. And
Right.
it's so powerful for whatever you're doing. And I think that is a good lesson I'm learning right now, and that you're just describing as you got into that. I want to shift our conversation into the food bank and
Okay.
what you and I've been talking about in the green room and before today was actually how we know what the purpose, what you're doing at the food bank. But I want to kind of overlay that with the 5 areas of well-being. So there's 5 areas of well-being. And I was telling you in the green room, I think, oh, definitely giving back to community. But you so brightly said, oh, everything we do has to do with well-being. So the 5 areas of well-being are purpose. I get to do what I do best every day and help other people. Social, I get connections with others, and we need 6 hours of social every day to have, that's the way we were created, to be social, to be in community. And then physical, like what I put in my body, what I do with my body. And then financial, what I know where my money is and how it's spent. And then the last one is community. I give back and get to serve in my community. So let's talk about how you use those 5 areas at the food bank and the difference that y'all are making right now and the impact you're making.
Well, and when you and I were talking, that was really the first time I'd heard those. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is great, because I do believe this is something that we definitely lean into, whether it's purposeful or not. So, purpose, everything that we do is centered on our neighbor, and every decision we make, our strategic plan, how are we impacting that neighbor? And we have to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. And we always try to make sure we bring it back. People often tell me or ask me, what is the difference between the corporate world and the not-for-profit world?
Mhm.
And in the for-profit world, you're working to try to increase your earnings per share. We're trying to make, the financial return on investment for shareholders. In the not for profit world and what we do, our return is based upon our social impact, and our social impact is based upon our mission. And our mission is to ensure that we have a hunger free, healthy North Texas. And so that fits right into these pillars. On the social aspect, yes, we all come to work here at the food bank, but we engage 33,000 volunteers a year.
Wow. Mm,
And so that we have so many people that come together with their teams, and they help us in our distribution center or at a center outside, or whatever it might be. But we have so many opportunities, not only for our employees, but for volunteers
mm,
to be able to connect and have that social. We have a lot of retirees that come in, and they are volunteer leaders. They're part of our Kernel, KERNELS
oh, I
program.
love that.
Yes, and so they're trained so that they can lead other groups of volunteers, but many of them came out of executive positions in corporate America, and they wanted to continue to give back, and they saw this as a way to continue to keep that social connection so that they could give back. So if we move on to financial,
Mhm,
and we think about the financial area, so much of what we do, and the reason why people have hunger is because hunger is a symptom of poverty. And
mm,
we know that someone has to rise above that issue of that financial issue and why they were there. This aligns directly with our work and of our strategic plan. We have our
mm,
food for today, but also hope for tomorrow. Hope for
mm,
tomorrow is about connecting those individuals to help meet the needs of that root cause. Why are they hungry? Why do they not have enough money for food? Some of that involves financial counseling. Some of that involves helping them go from a position where they're underpaid and underemployed to where they could actually be earning a livable wage.
mm,
And so a lot of it has to do with helping them get beyond that situation. It could be a health issue that's causing them to miss work, getting them that health care that they need so that they can strive and have stability. So that's that financial
mhm,
aspect of it.
mhm.
Physical, we focus on nutritious food. Our goal is that more than 90% of everything that we distribute is nutritious. And so that is so important to what they put in their body as well as having something in their stomach, because we know unless they have that nutritious product, it's not going to help them long term. It's actually could cause worse issues down the road from a health standpoint if they are eating sugary junk food all the
Mhm,
time and that's all that they were given. Everybody loves a treat every now and then, but
mhm.
we know that sometimes nutritious food is more expensive than other food. For example, we have really leaned into produce. About 35% of those 107 million meals that we distributed last year, 35% of them was fresh produce.
Wow.
And so we
Amazing.
know that's so important for families, and they won't use their money to go buy that because it's more expensive and it perishes quicker.
Mm,
So that's sort of that sort of physical,
mm,
nutritious kind of aspect. And then community. Of course, we all come together and we build community. We have opportunities for people to come in with their teams and to be able to volunteer. We're probably one of the very few organizations in our area that can accommodate large groups. And
wow.
so we enjoy that opportunity to help other teams connect with their purpose and show their impact that they can have on their community by working together.
I love that. I have so many questions. So I'm gonna zero in on probably on the first one, which
Okay.
is how when you think about well-being and you think about how you develop the very first one of purpose. How do you integrate that in to everything you do? How do you make sure people understand the mission? What's something you all do there that you've learned back from your communications at TI and that you've brought in? I think so many times people want to feel valued at work, if they're in the workplace or in what they do, and they're not feeling valued. They're not feeling like they're doing meaningful work. And I think the secret sauce is connecting the purpose into the work.
Right. So we have been very intentional about bringing in real impact stories into the things that we do. Every year we have an organizational summit with
Mhm.
all of our employees. We shut down the food bank and we integrate throughout that day stories of our own team members. of sometime maybe whenever they were food insecure or they needed help, and how they were able to get help, and how maybe they were able to use some of the resources that we now provide our neighbors, and showing that personal impact with someone that they know. We've brought in neighbors who we have benefited. There was recently one that came from Venezuela. They were both engineers in Venezuela, but because of the political unrest, they had sought refuge here in our area. So they're legal immigrants into the area, but they didn't speak English. And one of our partners helped them to be able to
Mm,
speak English. And now one of them is employed with a career path at one of their partner corporate organizations that said, yes, we will take the people that go through your academy program. And then the other one got to work on a business plan and owns her own bakery now. And so she had been teaching, she'd been doing home baked goods to try to make money whenever they first got here. And they needed help when they first got here, but now they're thriving.
I
And they're, one of their children is still in high school. The other one now is in college studying nursing. And, it's those success stories where you can see where you've taken someone from a situation where they have not been able to thrive, but you've given them access to these resources for a temporary period.
mhm,
Then now they're in that situation where they can thrive. We bring those back in because that is where we connect with purpose. If you just talk about the neighbor and the neighbor doesn't have a name or a face, it's really hard to make that connection overall. But what I'm going to say is I believe every person can find
mhm,
purpose in whatever their job is.
mhm,
Whenever I was at Texas Instruments, I talked a lot about purpose. And I said, if you're working in the finance organization, you have a purpose.
mhm,
You are helping to make sure that the organization is running with integrity, that everything is happening. Because if something were to go off the rails there, then you have all these thousands of employees
mhm,
that would possibly be without a job, or could be impacted by that. And so every organization, every person has a purpose. And I have gone and spoken to school children about that, about finding their purpose and helping them to know. And I said, give me a job that doesn't have purpose. And somebody said, somebody who cuts grass. And I was like, oh, you don't think they have
mhm,
purpose? And so we would go through this step, and I would ask them some questions. And then they would finally realize, yeah, they do have purpose. And so it's just really trying to find that and make sure that that's what centers you, and that's
mhm.
what you're doing, what you're doing.
I love that. And I think, especially with the food bank, I think the numbers that you've been talking about and you shared with me earlier, I want you to share with our audience just to bring it into reality of what the problem is right now with food insecure people and how many, the numbers, what the numbers are looking like in this region, and what you guys need right now to help with that.
So if you look now with some recent data that just came out a few months ago, Texas now has the highest food insecurity in the nation. The number of people that are food insecure. We like things bigger and better in Texas, but this is not one thing that we think is a badge of honor for us, because it used to be California. Now it's Texas. Our population has gone up. And with that population increase, then we've also seen needs go up. I just had a conversation this week with someone that we were talking about the economic prosperity of the region, and how the region is really going gangbusters with
Mhm.
technology and new headquarters companies moving in, and unemployment is lower, inflation's starting to level out. But with that, there also comes a greater divide. And there's also a group of people in our community that, because of all this economic prosperity is coming in, home prices have gone up,
Right.
food prices have gone up, all these things have gone up. And those that don't have the same earning potential as some of those others, then we are seeing more people that had never needed assistance before need assistance now. A recent congressional economic report showed that the average Texas family from just 3 years ago to now is paying over $1,000 a month more for the same things that they were doing 3 years ago.
That number needs to get out. I mean,
Right?
I mean, $1,000
And that's the
more.
average. That's the average Texas family. And if you look at that lowest income bracket, 30% of everything they make is just going towards food. 40% is just transportation and housing. And so then on top of that, you have things like utilities and insurance and taking care of, whatever your kids may need and all these other things. And that just doesn't leave enough there for them to do that. So that's why in the area that we serve at the North Texas Food Bank, we serve counties all the way up to Oklahoma and a couple of down below Dallas. In our area, we have the fourth highest number of people in the entire country that are food insecure
Mhm.
out of the 200 Feeding America Food Bank Network
That's crazy. What is
members.
there, 28 million people in Texas? So you can imagine if we're number 4 in the country, what those numbers
Right.
look like. So this goes
Yes.
into our 5th area of well-being and thriving, and that's community. So if you're a leader right now out there in this region, what would you advise them to do to help bring their team in or to help give back and help with North Texas Food Bank? What are some things that leaders can do in the workplace right now?
We work with so many companies and organizations across our network. Number one, we can make your dollar go further. So if you're looking at corporate giving or employee giving and you want to be able to focus on a particular cause, especially around the holidays, as you're thinking about Thanksgiving and the meals you're having with your families, the families that don't have as much, they want to have those family experiences as well. That's good for their mental well-being, is to be together, and we want to be able to support them and the kind of food that they need for their families. For every dollar contributed to us, we can provide 3 meals with that dollar. Sometimes we get matches from corporations and then we can amplify that, double or
Mhm.
triple that as well. So number one, give funds is a great way to do that. We have something called a virtual food drive where you can even set up competitions within your own company, and you can do virtual food drives, and the departments that give the most can have their bragging rights. But we have an opportunity on our website, ntfb.org, where that can happen, and you can set that up, or you can set one up for your entire corporation, and we can do it really easy online. You can donate food. Some people like that tangible
Mhm.
aspect of donating food. We also have a list on our website of the most needed items for those that want to donate food. We have an annual peanut butter drive every year. And during the State Fair of Texas, we collect peanut butter and canned food. But, those are some of the things that we go through most often. But there are things there that if you wanted to focus on one item or two items, that's very helpful for us as well. The other thing I would say is people don't realize is advocacy is a big part
Mm.
of what we do. So even if you can't give, or maybe you don't want to bring your team out to volunteer with us, which you can find volunteer opportunities on our website as well. We need those volunteers. We can't do what we do without those volunteers, especially after the holidays. It tends to be a little bit lighter. So I would encourage you to think about what you might be able to do with your teams in January and February, but we need those voices in the community. Last legislative session in Texas, we were able to get some things passed that we hadn't before. Sometimes it takes us several times to get things passed, but we need both our Texas and our federal officials to know that hunger policy matters, because if we don't have strong hunger policy, then we will not be able to meet the needs in our community and people will go hungry.
Mhm.
What's coming up right now at the federal level is the Farm Bill. And so we're hopeful that though it only gets appropriated about every 5 to 6 years, that our elected officials will understand that our world is very different today and the needs are so much more today than they were 5 or 6 years ago.
I love that. I think you gave some great examples, either all the way from just, setting up a competition to going to advocacy. I love the idea too, because I think teams, especially in the hybrid workplace, in the workplace today, they're looking for opportunities to bond with their team and do something together. And so if you're thinking about bringing your team in for an event, say in January or February, what greater way to go serve at a time when you need people? People are probably always thinking about serving at Christmas when you get a lot of volunteers, but I love that idea of January or February. I think that's great. So, and we'll have people, we'll put it in the show notes how to reach you. The last piece I want to really talk to you about, Trisha, is leadership and lessons in leadership and what you've learned over your career and the advice that you would give to these brand new leaders that are coming out. There's a lot of new leaders in this new future of workplace. And it's very different from what it was 20, 30 years ago. What is the advice that you would give that you've learned that you would say stands the test of time, whether that you're hybrid or not hybrid, or you've got a remote workforce, whatever that is? What are the things that are just tried and true that you've learned that you continue to share in your speaking and in your mentoring with other leaders?
One of the things I talk about is being bold.
Mm,
And whenever you break that down a little bit, that B is about believing you can do something, believing that you have the skills, that you know how to transfer those skills into that next level position or that position that you want. But you really have to assess, I think, in today's world, what have I done that's going to position me well?
mhm,
And they have these things about gender and how, men tend to be more bold
mhm,
in some of the things versus women. And regardless of gender, I've seen it happen with so many, male and female,
mm,
where someone will say, well, I'm not really equipped for that role. And you sit there and you talk through that and you say, well, have you done this? Have you done this? Well, how would that translate? And just really thinking about what
mm,
experiences you've had that can translate into these skills that might be needed for this next role. You may not have done it on a day to day basis, but you've done something.
absolutely.
And if you've done it successfully, how can you do that? And, it's not about getting promoted every 2 years. I was not always promoted every 2 years. I would stay in a role typically 5 to 6 years before I would move to another role.
Mhm,
Sometimes that role was an advancement. Sometimes that role was a lateral move. So I would gain additional experience that would then position me for better things in the future. So I think you have to think about being sort of believing yourself. Part of that is making sure you have that background and experience so you can, with confidence,
mhm,
be able to think, I can do this and I can believe in my skills and ability because I have this breadth of experience that can translate into whatever that next role is. So you have to be able to bring that forward. The second thing is
mm,
being open to opportunities. And I had another person that was, I feel like, one of my advocates whenever I was at I was being asked to do a particular role. And she said, and I was like, oh, but my plate's already full and I've already got everything going on here. And I just want to do a good job at what I'm doing. And she said, you were asked for this because someone believed that you could do this.
mm,
If you don't do it, that's okay, but you just need to know that you're probably not going to get another ask from this person
mm,
if you turn them down. So you need to think twice about what you can do and what you can't do. You don't want to overload your plate, but sometimes that means for a season you might need to do a little extra so that you get that experience. And I'm so glad I listened to that
mhm,
because I actually found another one of my passions whenever I was at the company by doing this because it was a global role.
mm,
And I loved working globally. I
mhm.
loved learning about new cultures. And that was my first job that was able to give me that breadth of experience there.
That's amazing.
So you've got to think about it. Don't just say, no, well, my plate's too full and I don't want to do this, because you might find your passion. You might
Mhm,
find something that you love. And not only that, but the company may be looking at you and say, can this person do that? And so
mhm,
that could position you for other things. And then the L is about leadership. It really is about understanding your leadership. How do you lead? And then also knowing when you need to be led.
mhm,
Even here in my role, even though I'm CEO, I am not a directive CEO. I'm an empowering CEO.
mm,
I set out what do I want to have accomplished, and then we have priorities and goals. How you get to those priorities and goals are between you and your leaders and your supervisors, but we have, you know, key performance indicators that we measure on a quarterly basis. But we bring in people that we can empower because they're going to be the subject matter experts on what they do. But sometimes it's a little bit of a yin and yang. They have to tell us, because they are the subject matter expert, this is what we should be doing. And so we have to listen, another L,
mhm,
listen, and then be able to provide the leadership to ensure that we can continue to either grow, scale, shut things down, whatever we need to do to make our organization better. And then D is about differentiation,
Mm,
making sure that you can uniquely bring to the organization something that no one else can. Otherwise, you're no better than XYZ
mm,
here. And especially as you're thinking about trying to move up in an organization, when you were in high school and you graduated, maybe in your top 10% of your class, and you went to college and maybe a prestigious college, guess what? You became one of many best 10% in their
mm,
classes. And so the playing field changed when you graduate from college and you have this great accolades and you go into the workforce and you've been great in college and you go into the workforce. Well, guess what? They're hiring the best of the best for those particular roles. And so you become one of many.
mm,
So when you're one of many, you've got to think about what can I do uniquely that's
mhm.
going to help me to continue to advance and grow in this role. And I think now, sort of in that, we talked a little about the hybrid workspace and working from home, and that I was talking with some other leaders, and being present is actually a competitive
Yeah.
advantage and a differentiator.
You nailed
So,
that. You're so
because
right. Yeah.
you can't have hallway conversations on Zoom.
Mm-mm.
You can't meet up with somebody in the break room, which I do all the time. I'll go down and get my coffee and I will see somebody and it's like, hey, tell me about XYZ.
Mhm.
And I get to understand and hear and see what some of the great things are in a very casual environment. If they were not present, I wouldn't be able to do that. And their leaders wouldn't be able to do that. And their peers wouldn't be able to do that.
So it's important, I think, to kind of figure out those opportunities if you're a remote company. And that's
Hmm.
what I've seen. The ones that do it well have a pattern of when their employees come in, and they have a pattern
Yes.
of sessions, of in-person sessions, so that they can connect. And I've also seen a lot of this, have an accountability buddy or a mentor.
Yes.
And it sounds like you've had a mentor your whole life. And then how are you making sure your people have, besides their, it sounds like you're an empowering leader. What does that mean when it comes to development and growth? And how are you helping your leaders and the people underneath them grow?
Yeah, and I came from a culture where I was invested in,
Yes.
and I wouldn't be a leader today if I had not had that investment in me. And oftentimes people think about nonprofits and they think, oh, well, they can't do technology, or oh, they can't do learning and development. And I would actually flip it on the other side and say, we can't be our best unless we have those tools that help equip us to do our jobs in the best way possible. We're more effective if we have people that are trained and empowered to go and do their job. I can't tell everyone at the company what to do.
Right.
You need to do this, and well, you're not packing that box right, or you're not, whatever it might be, or this isn't the right route for our trucks. I can't do that. But we have experts on our team that have done that, and they're bringing that experience into what we do, and so we have to leverage that. And the other thing is we do a very strong training and development program. We've been talking about strengths today.
Mhm.
Strengths is one of those tools that we've brought to every employee inside the food bank so that they understand what their strengths are, what the strengths of their team members are, so they can more effectively work together. Because we all get frustrated with other
Mhm.
people in the workforce. But if you have a little bit of understanding about what the value is that they can bring and how that may present itself differently from what your strengths and
Mhm.
that are, then you probably have a better common ground to be able to work through the differences in work styles overall. We lean in a lot of other different tools as well too,
Mhm.
but we're also working with our senior directors, which is sort of the layer below our C levels and VPs, and talking to them about their role enterprise wide in leadership.
Mm.
We've just introduced a new buddy program for new hires that come in to make sure that they have someone that can help them navigate within the food bank and some of the experience that they are able to need. We have a very sort of well thought out onboarding program that we've got very good feedback with that helps our supervisors of the people coming in know what they need to do with that. And we're always working on ways to continuously improve that and make it even better for our employees. We do a quarterly engagement pulse survey and annual survey to try to see what is going on. And we don't just let those results sit.
Right.
We try to understand where are the areas that we can be better. And our favorability rating right now is, I think, 92% for favorability, which is
That is
amazing
amazing.
for any organization. But we still don't think we're there yet if 100% of our employees aren't favorable. And so we try to dig into that. And why is it that they're not? And are there things that we can do to make that better?
I love how your teaching and what you learned you have been giving back and pouring into the food bank, because you hear all the teaching that you've had
Mhm.
that somebody poured into
Right,
you, and now you're mirroring that into the nonprofit world, and and you see that the difference of what that brings.
right.
So congrats on that. As we get ready to close out, can you think of one thing you do to help you dominate your day? One thing that, it doesn't have to be perfect because we don't ever have a perfect day, right? But what is one thing you do to help yourself manage yourself to at least dominate your day and feel like you've gotten to meet that achiever role for the day?
Right. Well, I will say one thing that I do is I do try to get ahead of my calendar. And because I'm not a last minute kind
Mhm,
of performer, I like to sort of see what's on my calendar, and it causes less stress for
mhm,
me to not have to be, oh my goodness, I have this like right
mhm,
this next and I haven't prepared for it. I like to be prepared and I like to understand that. And so I would say, just from a work day, making sure you can stay ahead
mhm,
and using tools. There's a lot of tools out there that can help you and prompt you when you need to be able to start working on something. You can set your own deadlines. There's so much technology that can help you do that today, that just using and understanding and taking the time to do some of those organization tools. And then more on a personal level, when we're thinking about our own personal well-being and things, I said I probably would fail at that. I probably don't do that enough. There are a few things that I certainly try to make sure that I take the time to do for me, but I think we all have other responsibilities outside of work. I moved my mom here
mhm,
3.5 years ago from Kentucky because of some health issues that she was having, and she chose to move here. But I'm trying to keep her living independently as long as possible, which is what her desire is, but it takes extra time. I am her caregiver,
mhm,
even though she lives independently. So I have to get her groceries. I get her medicine. I have an automated medicine dispenser for her. I have to check in on her to make sure she's doing okay every day. So on my way home from work, instead of listening to the radio or whatever, I typically call my mom
mhm,
and see how she's doing, make sure everything's okay there. Saturday mornings, where typically I was available for anything or everything that the food bank would want, unless it's something I really, really need to be at. I empower other people to do those things because that's my time, and I have to put some boundaries around that
mhm,
because if I don't do it, she will suffer as a result of it.
mhm,
So she will not have the medicine that she needs. She will not have the groceries and the food that she needs. She will not know what her calendar is for the next week and talk through what she needs to think about. And so you have to put some boundaries. And I have a new granddaughter, and
right,
I want to spend more time with my granddaughter too. And I think we all have to have some balance. And there's seasons of our life, I believe, that are going to be more work focused.
mhm,
There's seasons of our life that will be more, you're going to have personal focus.
mhm.
And we have to have the flexibility to be able to take care of what we need to do when we need to do it, to be able to fully be balanced and being well ourselves.
We talk a lot here at Dominate Your Day about designing your life, your work around your life instead of your life around your work, and
Hmm.
not living your day in default. I loved how I heard in your story about your futuristic, because it's looking ahead and helping
Hmm.
you that. So we're using our talents all the time. We just
Yes,
realize it.
absolutely.
And then how you have the boundaries, that's your achiever saying, okay,
Yeah,
I'm going to do this, but I've got to do all these other things. So I really appreciate you sharing. And we're one person, we're not two different people. And the strength shows
right.
personally and professionally. So
Well,
I love how you talked about that.
my number one competition, that was one that also showed up, I think, in a different place as far as the top on my list. I would have never thought that. I am competitive, but the competition is about us winning as a food bank, is us winning together.
Mhm.
And I think what we talk about with all the things we've talked about today, all those are tools to help us win.
Yes. And your competition is the driver of show me the numbers so I can see where we are. And the numbers you had quickly with the food bank being fourth needy in the nation of
Yeah.
all the ones. So when my husband has competition, I said, you just need a dashboard every day. That's all you need. It's not,
And I do.
yeah, there you go.
We now have dashboards and KPIs, and we use our Power BI data, and it helps us to make better informed decisions.
And I love it. I love it. Because if I don't have competition, I'm going to find somebody that does so we can have those dashboards. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Trisha, for bringing so much gold to the group today and just your sharing your life, sharing what you've done and how you're giving back. And I can't wait to hear about how others are getting involved in the food bank. I know I want to with my group. So thank you so much. And we appreciate you being here today.
Well, and thank you so much for what you do and sharing these stories that we can all learn from.
Thank you.